There are two issues that I want to talk about today in relation to the Department of Child Protection here in Adelaide. One of them refers to a coronial inquest into the death of a couple of Aboriginal children in the north of the state that occurred a couple of years ago now. And the coroner has come out with a report which we all should be mindful of. Also makes the department responsible for the inadequate protection of these two kids, and which, because of their inadequacies, resulted in the death of these two children. We all need to be mindful, I think, that the department takes a certain degree of responsibility. Well, actually, it takes a lot of responsibility for the way it behaves and the way it treats people that are innocent, particularly children, and the department needs to take responsibility for its actions, which cause damage to families, children, and in some cases, as in this case, the death of a couple of children. So, and there's that case, and then there's this other one I want to talk about where the department is being strongly criticised. It came out in today's Advertiser that parents of southern suburbs pedophile victims slam police and child protection. We're just going to go through that article with you as well. So, and I'm going to do the first one. I'm just going to do the video of the release of this report by the coroner, and then we'll talk about that on the other side, and then we'll have a conversation about this other issue, which is a criticism of the Child Protection Department in relation to pedophilia and how they target families who know or have been impacted by a pedophile's behaviour. So we'll start with this one here, and we'll talk about it when we're finished.
The Premier called an urgent meeting with the Child Protection Department and the Minister this morning after reading the Deputy Coroner's scathing 70-page report last night. Just hours later, authorities fronted the cameras to reveal they would be accepting all of the Deputy Coroner's recommendations, including an independent review of the system. The explosive findings confirmed what devastated loved ones of Amber Rigney and Corey Mitchell already knew: they could have been saved. The Deputy Coroner said authorities should have intervened before the 5- and 6-year-olds were brutally murdered alongside their mother by her ice addict partner at Hillier in 2016. Despite consistent observations ice use impacted their mother's ability to care for the children, the department didn't act. Not anymore, the new minister vowing to step up.
Myself, the Premier and Cathy Taylor, the Chief Executive of the Department for Child Protection, met early this morning. At that meeting, we firmly resolved to accept and implement all of the recommendations that the Deputy Coroner has made in his report.
While the Chief Executive admitted in this case the department got it wrong, she made it clear staff had already started implementing coronial recommendations resulting from similar cases where innocent children have died.
Our staff are working harder than ever to investigate matters, respond to more matters.
The family of Amber Rigney and Corey Mitchell say it's too little too late and is calling for those responsible still working in the department to be sacked. The government has pledged to have the review of the system and the changes implemented by the end of the year.
Now, it's fair enough to say that the reality is that they shouldn't have made the mistakes in the first place. So it seems it is a little too early, too late, that we shouldn't be able to exonerate the department at any level for making mistakes, particularly when children have died. It is an issue which continually seems to be erupting around us, that more and more there's these investigations into the child protection system which indicate that it is in disarray, that something needs to be done to correct this system. We are beyond hearing countless apologies by the department for their stuff-ups, and that there's something wrong with a system that is not able to address a range of issues, and this is just one of them, a critical issue nevertheless, because we're talking about the death of a couple of children. And I know from this case, after I've spoken to the grandparents some time ago, that there was one child who was actually in their care at the time who survived. And I can't help but think about the trauma that it's created for these grandparents, losing these grandchildren and their daughter in what happened, and that the department somehow steps back and says, well, you know, we're kind of taking responsibility because we accept the coroner's report that they're going to have an independent body looking at some of these issues. And the question for me is, who comprises that independent body? Who's the overseer of these massive mistakes that are made? And specifically, what corrections are being made so that they don't happen again? We don't hear anything of the changes that are supposed to be taking place within the department in order for things to be rectified. And as long as, and it's just as frustrating as hell for me, and I've been doing this for a long time, but the failure to be able to change what is an obvious, faulty, erroneous, negative, vindictive, attacking system has been there forever. And it never, ever seems to change. People don't seem to be able to grasp the problem that needs to be changed. And I did a video this week, actually. So the last one I did, which was on what needs to be changed within the system. And that I listed 10 things that we view need to be changed. And I can guarantee you that none of those will be. That it's as obvious as the nose on your face to so many people out there, including myself, what's wrong with this system, from having conversations with the stakeholders, the parents and children who are involved in this system, that we know what's wrong, but the department refuses to do anything about it. There is no indication whatsoever that the department has learnt from any of these lessons. And I wonder if they ever will. Now, I'm going to move now to another article which was in today's Advertiser, which was entitled Parents of Southern Suburbs Pedophile Victims Slam Police and Child Protection. And I'll go through this article and we'll talk about the implications that are evident from this. And I do need to say that I've worked with, and I'm working with a woman at the moment who fits into this same category, who was looking after her grandchildren and caring for them appropriately, but while within this family, which was the grandfather is a pedophile and has been jailed as a result of his behaviour for hopefully a long time, and the grandmother was a woman who was extremely abused by this man, to the point whereby if she was walking through a supermarket or in a store and she raised her head and she looked at somebody else, when she got back home she'd get a beating because she looked at another man. And the most horrific domestic violence occurred in this family. And this grandmother has been targeted by the department endlessly and by the police for the fact that they believe she should have known about his behaviour, his pedophilic behaviour while he was in the house. And she said she just did not know. And I believe her 100%. She just did not know. And she was so much subjugated to fear and subjugated to his behaviour that she was oblivious to what may have been happening in other areas of the house with regard to these children. And some of the offending in relation to him occurred with somebody outside the house. But she became the target. And it's wrong at every level that we choose not to believe people who are innocent bystanders, who just do not know, because pedophiles and domestic violence perpetrators are often very good at hiding their true nature. I mean, you're not going to let people know. You're not going to hang up a banner saying, look, I'm a pedophile. You're not going to let someone else know in the family know what you're doing if you personally know that it is wrong. So, and to hide that from your partner, particularly in a DV situation where she's full of fear, is quite common, I think. And so to be targeted, though, and be labelled in the same category as your pedophilic partner is horrific, and it perpetuates the notion of violence and abuse, particularly when the person who's the victim of the abuse is not heard, understood, and therefore labelled as a part of the crime around pedophilia. So I'm just going to go through this article with you, and we'll discuss it as we go through it. The parents of a young girl targeted by a pedophile were threatened with the removal of their children. Now, the Child Protection Department wants to keep the predator's name secret. Fair enough, so be it. The parents of a child assaulted by a child sex predator have condemned police and the Child Protection Department, saying they treated them like criminals in their daughter's time of need. And I've experienced that firsthand, speaking to some of these people, and it lacks insight. It lacks. So the department will talk about a parent lacking insight. What we often see is projection of that, because the department itself often lacks insight also into what's happening to the family as a result of the pedophilic behaviour being disclosed, and the failure to believe the family that this actually is something they weren't a party to, but making the assumption that they were, and that once that perpetrator has left the home, jailed hopefully, then they're free of him and they can get on with their lives. But oh no, the department won't accept that. The department will choose to say that this person is a party to the event, and therefore they need to have the children removed because the parent failed to protect the children. Now, as I said before, parents often don't know when a pedophile is in the house. Parents do not know what behaviours are occurring, how often they're occurring, who they're occurring with, whatever. They probably don't know anything about that whatsoever. Yet they appear to be also criminally involved, according to the police and to the department. The serial predator, a Southern Suburbs former army captain in his 70s, and last month had already imposed a period of non-parole extending after pleading guilty to indecent assault. The young primary school age girl he indecently assaulted was not his first child victim, and he will now spend about 16 years behind bars, and so he should. During sentencing submissions in the LA District Court, the girl's parents told Judge Ian Press the traumatic experience was exacerbated by involvement of both SA Police and the Child Protection Department. And what we need to understand here is that if you have the police enter into your life and have an accusation against another family member, particularly as devastating as pedophilia is, and you do not know about that, we've got to consider how traumatic is that for the family to have to be confronted with this notion that the person that you've had in your house, a person that the family may respect in many ways or even love, is someone who's perpetrating such a horrific crime. It's traumatic at every level, and we need to understand the impact that trauma has on the family when you discover something as horrific as this is. So during sentencing submissions in the court, the girl's parents told us that when the advertiser contacted the department, it was warned not to identify the man, despite there being no legal reason not to do. It was the latest example of a highly scrutinised veil of secrecy it holds over its involvement in South Australian criminal matters involving children, and came in the same week it fought to suppress critical details about the death of an infant whose at-risk status it had been notified of 23 times, and I've talked about that in that child in a previous video. After the girl disclosed the assault, the department and police's involvement, her parents said that left them feeling betrayed. That's a great word to describe it as well. The court was told she was taken out of her classroom by police unbeknown to her parents and questioned alongside a care worker. And this is another issue. I think that we need to find a way to, if police are going to interview children, that those children need to be safe. Now, I have attended police interviews which have been handled very professionally with children who were disclosing childhood sexual abuse, and in one of those cases that I attended, the mother was present in the room. She didn't speak, but she was there to be with the child, who was only 7 or 8, I think. And so we know that often parents can be present. But in this case, I would suggest that they didn't want the parents there because the mother, in this case, or another relative, they believed was also involved in the pedophilic behaviour. So they're making some assumptions, I guess, that were totally untrue, and they placed the child in an at-risk situation in itself because the child wasn't adequately supported. It is one further example of the far-reaching negative impact such offending can have on the lives of young children and the lives of the victims' families. The girl's father told the court he and his wife were accused of telling our daughter not to help or cooperate with detectives, which he said was completely untrue. And police, believe it or not, police kind of make these assumptions, and we don't know where those assumptions come from, because clearly the parents haven't disclosed that that's what they've done. So where have those ideas evolved from? He went on to explain how he and his wife were instructed by the department to sign a statutory declaration and safety plan saying they would not hinder the investigation, and threatened that their children would be taken from them if they did. The girl's mother described the threat made her family feel like they were in the wrong. This was heartbreaking, she said. We were made to feel like we were the offenders instead of the victim's parents, and that is often how people feel, as I was explaining earlier. We completely lost trust in DCP, SA Police and the legal system, which are all supposed to be there to protect us and keep us safe. The Child Protection Department, whose chief executive is Kathy Taylor, who none of us ever see anymore, was asked if it was standard process to get parents to be threatened with the loss of their children and made to sign statutory declarations. Deputy Chief Executive Fiona Ward did not respond to the question and instead said to protect the privacy of children and young people, the department does not discuss its involvement in individual cases. An SA police spokesman said the girl was interviewed in the presence of a support worker, which would not be necessarily someone that this person knew. She was a stranger, for Christ's sake. It is not uncommon for police to speak to children in the absence of a parent. May not be all that uncommon, but we should change that so that they have someone, even a family member, someone they know and someone they could trust, who could at least observe what the police are saying in that interview, but with an appropriate representative present in certain situations, she said. So what this tells us is that parents whose relative, grandfather, father, whatever, is a pedophile does not mean that the family are responsible for the behaviour of somebody else, or that they in any way have been involved in that behaviour. It's a shroud of secrecy, pedophilia. It isn't advertised. People do it, and because they know that it's wrong, and they know that if others found out about it, that it would be disclosed. So then they're going to ensure that others, even the closest people to them, do not know about this behaviour. And the people that become victimised by all of this are those innocent family members who are simply bystanders and who were not involved or knew nothing about what was happening in relation to the childhood abuse. It is an issue which continually occurs, and so the police and the department need to find different ways by which they can manage their behaviour so that we can ensure that other people don't become victimised by someone else's disgusting and abhorrent behaviour. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves and be safe.